and become death, the destroyer of worlds.
This was Oppenheimer, the godfather and the creator of the atomic bomb. Welcome to Nordic Nonsense, and today we're going to talk about things you most probably didn't know about Oppenheimer, and I think you must know that before you watch the movie. Or after. In the 2nd of August 1939, 1 month before the start of the Second World War, American President Franklin Roosevelt received a letter from Albert Einstein saying there is a big danger, as Nazi scientists Fritz Strassmann and Otto Hahn has discovered the nuclear fission. Nuclear fission, to make it simple for people who hate paleontology like myself, in simple language, they came so close to create a nuclear bomb. So Roosevelt was like, what are we gonna do, Einstein, man? And Einstein was like, bro, there is no we in this. But as a professional, I would say, fake it till you make it. And that's what started the nuclear race. While soldiers were waging war, the scientists were fighting another war. But this all was changed by Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was a controversial character. His close ones described him as weird. He spent most of the time in the library. He never got out of the library. If he finished studying physics, he would study languages, Indian philosophy, literature. Some sources says that he have learned Dutch on his own in only 6 weeks, just because he had to give a lecture in Netherlands. He admitted that he once tried to poison his teacher, Patrick Blackett, with an apple full of chemicals, because Oppenheimer thought that he was wasting his time with laboratory homework. Before you think about doing this to your teacher, make sure that you're a half genius at least. Yet his intelligence and outstanding skills qualified him to be the head of one of the most important projects in the world, the Manhattan Project. Even it got nothing to do with Manhattan, the Manhattan Project was thought to be named after their first offices that was opened in Manhattan, located at 270 Broadway. Now I become death, the destroyer of the worlds. The story of Oppenheimer's famous quote comes from the Hindu sacred scripts, Bhagavad Gita. He recalls that when they saw the first explosions, we knew the world will never be the same again.
Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent.
A lot of the scientists immediately regretted participating in this project. Other scientists pulled over, like the Polish Joseph Rotblat. When he realized that the Germans cannot practically have the time to make an atomic bomb, he left the project on the grounds of consciousness in 1944 to be the only scientist to leave the Manhattan Project for moral reasons. Later on, he becomes an activist against atomic bombs. Years later, he gets the Nobel Prize for Peace. After the first test, called Trinity, Oppenheimer would gather his fellow scientists and says his famous statement, "Today you are heroes, but in a short time you will be criticized for a long time." The 6th of August 1945. Even all reports indicates that the Germans had lost the war, yet the US government insists on dropping a uranium bomb called Little Boy on Hiroshima, killing more than 230,000 people in a blink of an eye. 3 days later, they dropped the plutonium bomb named the Fat Man, killing more than 75 just in a blink of an eye. It seemed that they tried the whole collection while they had the chance. So the Oppenheimer prophecy came to be true. He once said, they won't fear it until they understand it, and they won't understand it until they have used it. A lot of historians argue that Americans would have dropped the bombs away from civilians, somewhere like Tokyo Bay. It would have delivered the same message. But that's the American cruelty that we all like to turn a blind eye to. A decade later, Oppenheimer distanced himself from responsibility, blaming it on the state. I carry no weight on my conscience. Our work has changed the conditions in which men live, but the use made of these changes is the problem of the governments, not of scientists. But the story won't stop here. In September 1949, the Soviet Union succeeded to make their own first bomb. Oh shit! The Americans lost it. So they decided to go to a whole new level, the H-bomb. If the atomic bomb is like pew pew pew, the H-bomb is like Not to go in complications, I just want to say that the H-bomb is 1,000 times stronger than the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer refused to join in, as this was not a bomb to end the war, This was a bomb to end the world. And from here, karma started to hunt him. The hero became a traitor, as he rejected to make them an even bigger bomb. They began to bring an old love story of his, involving Jean Tatlock back in the 30s. She was a member of the Communist Party. What? And despite all this information have been previously checked, before he was appointed to lead the Manhattan Project, they hanged him and accused him of treason. They revoked his access to any sensitive information, despite the rejection of the scientific community. A lot of scientists found this a pure insanity. Einstein made fun of the AEC in Atomic Energy Commission, actually stood for Atomic Extermination Conspiracy. Werner von Braun, the chief architect of Saturn V that got us to the moon, he also declared in England Oppenheimer would have been knighted. By the way, von Braun, he was a Nazi scientist himself, who America have welcomed in and forgot about his past. If you want me to make a video about him in the future, let me know in the comments. No, seriously, if you're not putting energy to leave a comment, why shall I put energy to make a video? Mic drop. Come here, let me tell you a secret.
Von Braun himself was a Nazi scientist who American welcomed him in and forgot about his past.
The atomic bomb was the strongest weapon ever used, which could make any country unstoppable. Some people at the time saw the US chances of turning into another Hitler, especially after dropping 2 bombs without discriminating between kids and families and fighting soldiers. And that the world must have balance. One of those was the German Klaus Fox and the American Theodore Hall, who were scientists from inside of the Manhattan Project, whom spied and released information to the Soviet Union. When they were asked years later, why did they do that? They simply replied that the main reason they spied for the Russians was that they saw that this huge power cannot be owned by only one country. And if more than one country own it, that would create some sort of balance. In the Korean War or in the War of Vietnam, the Americans could have easily used the atomic bomb. Why didn't they? Because the Russians had it to. Those mad mass destruction weapons have actually made peace. But who's the hero here? The guy who created the bomb resulting to end the war, or the guys that spied for the enemies? I'll leave this to you. It's very controversial. Some people would say Oppenheimer was a hero who helped his country in the war. Others would say that he was a murderer of millions. But there is no doubt that the nuclear weapons have changed the world forever. Some people argue that Oppenheimer's greatest sin was to make it inevitable to own an atomic bomb to survive. He opened the door to hell. It started with the Americans, then the Russians, followed then by the French, not to forget that they used the Algerian desert as a nuclear testing ground in 1960s. If you read the book Nuclear Tests in Algeria, Studies, Research and Testimonies, you'll find they have used civilians in the tests, tying them to wooden posts in the explosion sites, Ground Zero, in Ghana desert. The force of the explosion wave was equivalent to 5 times the combined power of the Japanese bombs together, to the extent that it produced a black cloud that reached the south of Portugal in an area called Fiahu, if I'm pronouncing it right, causing a black rain that terrified the inhabitants, not to mention the Algerian locals. More than 42,000 souls have suffered from cancer and tuberculosis, and no one is held accountable for those lives till today. France carried out 17 nuclear tests in Algeria between 1960 and 1966, but that's another video I might make in the future. Oppenheimer's breakthrough almost ended humanity not one time or 2 times, but actually several times. I will mention only one of them today. The rest should be in a separate video. During the missile crisis in 1962, America was terrified to the point that the Defense Secretary, Robert McNamara, spoke to Kennedy on a Sunday night expressing his fear that this might be the last time he sees the sunset. Such a drama queen. Both Russians and American soldiers were equipped with tactical nukes and were instructed to use them if we were attacked. The drama happened inside a Russian diesel-powered submarine equipped with 3 nuclear torpedoes. B-52 has lost communication with Moscow and had ran into the US naval quarantine. The crew of the submarine had orders to launch its nuclear payload towards the Americans if 3 key officers agreed: the fleet commander, the submarine commander, and the deputy commander. The submarine was in a dire state, on a brink of losing its power source, and it did not surface to avoid detection. Air conditioning was disabled to conserve fuel, raising the temperature inside to 50 degrees. The Americans detected its location and began dropping experimental depth charges. At this point, the submarine commander and his deputy agreed to launch the nuclear torpedoes. To activate the firing mechanism, they needed the approval from the fleet commander. However, he refused, because no American bombs had physically hit the submarine. Therefore, it seems more like a threat to force it to reveal itself rather than an actual attack. The story of Vasily Arkhipov can be found in a documentary titled The Man Who Saved the World. Imagine if Arkhipov had made a different decision. Imagine just one single mistake. Humanity would have ended forever. This is Nordic Nonsense, where we like to look at things with a slightly bit different angle. Don't be shy to check our previous videos, subscribe so you don't miss on the videos coming in the future, and look down below for the resources of all the information being provided in this video. Thank you for watching. Hada bra.